Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching the Patreon bonus stories.
And you are our wonderful, amazing, great Patreon patrons.
Now, before we get into the Patreon bonus stories, I want to talk about our community page and possibly Discord. So Discord is a discussion forum thing that we can set up.
It's like a Slack in a way.
It allows people to talk about different topics in different ways, and it sounds really cool. And we're thinking of setting one up. But we then realized we've got this cool community page here on Patreon where lots of people have been posting all sorts of cool things. So what we want to do before we start something new, because Jesse and I do this a lot, we start something new and then we have all this more work to do. We figured we've got a great community page here on Patreon. It's one of the actual tabs, and to be honest, Jesse,
It's hard to find.
I'm like, it's right there in front of you, but I didn't see it for a while.
Right.
So I'm going to do my best. Jesse and I are both going to do our best to get on there more often and comment.
Instead of us like creating a new perk level and popping and like having a Discord server and setting that all up and making you sign up for yet another thing with another password and all that annoying stuff, we're just going to take what you already have now, which is Patreon, and we're just going to ask you to go onto the community page, be a part of this community. We know from experience, from meeting patrons and from communications with patrons and everything like that, that you guys are freaking awesome.
Right. So, I mean, what we'd like to try in the next couple of weeks is have you go over there occasionally and see what's been posted, maybe post something yourself, but also respond to other people's posts. Like if they've posted something about getting a new Model 3, then say whatever you want to that post.
Right.
And see if we can get some of what we were trying to do on Discord. And the idea on Discord was to get all of our cool patrons to be talking to each other about whatever you want to talk about. So like, if you're planning a road trip and you're like, I'm going to be going through South Dakota, what should I see? And someone in South Dakota is like, you should see this.
You should come to my house.
Right.
Or,
we have this amazing group of like hundreds of awesome people.
Right.
And we think you guys talking to each other is valuable.
And I mean, keep in mind when you're doing this, that this isn't, the YouTube comment section. This isn't your Facebook comment section. You're not going to have a bunch of jerks. Everyone here is really nice. Right. And so, obviously be respectful and everything like that. But, we've got this really amazing community and we have experienced it for quite a while and we want to share it with you guys. But anyway, let's get into some stories because that's what you're here for.
Right. So this girl, she's 15 years old. She's from Sweden. Her name is Greta Thunberg and she spoke at the COP24 conference. And this speech, I know it's been a few months since it's happened, but
you need to hear it.
You need to hear it.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I am 15 years old and I'm from Sweden. I speak on behalf of Climate Justice Now. Many people say that Sweden is just a small country and it doesn't matter what we do. But I've learned that you are never too small to make a difference. And if a few children can get headlines all over the world just by not going to school, then imagine what we could all do together if we really wanted to. But to do that, we have to speak clearly, no matter how uncomfortable that may be. You only speak of green, eternal economic growth because you are too scared of being unpopular. You only talk about moving forward with the same bad ideas that got us into this mess, even when the only sensible thing to do is pull the emergency brake. You are not mature enough to tell it like it is. Even that burden you leave to us children. But I don't care about being popular. I care about climate justice and a living planet. Our civilization is being sacrificed for the opportunity of a very small number of people to continue making enormous amounts of money. Our biosphere is being sacrificed so that rich people in countries like mine can live in luxury. It is the sufferings of the many which pay for the luxuries of the few. The year 2078, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything while there still was time to act. You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done, rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within this system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself. We have not come here to beg world leaders to care. You have ignored us in the past, and you will ignore us again. We have run out of excuses, and we are running out of time. We have come here to let you know that change is coming, whether you like it or not. The real power belongs to the people. Thank you.
Okay, Jesse, like, hearing it from a 15-year-old girl just puts it in perspective, because she put us in our places. She's like, you guys aren't going to do crap.
Right.
We all know that as children.
Right.
Like,
You're all
we
lying
don't
to
believe
us.
your lies.
Right.
And you need to be doing something about it, but you're not. So we children are going to do something about it.
Right.
We're going to stop going to schools on Friday, and we're going to go to our local parliaments. Like, so she, on Friday, takes off school, goes to her parliament, sits there on the steps and protests. And she's saying, kids around the world, do this, because this is too important.
Right.
Still go to school on 4 days of the week,
Right.
but on that 5th day, make a statement, get some press, stop going to school, and let the politicians know that this is so serious that you have to stop what you're doing, stop making speeches,
Right.
and do something about it.
Reconsider your actions. And I mean, yeah, what an amazing young woman. It is really impactful when a 15-year-old is like, you know, in 2079, I will be celebrating my 75th birthday. And you're just like,
Yeah, and,
wow, you are going to be doing
and
that.
and her grandkids are going to ask her, you know, or like, why didn't you guys do anything when you had a chance? And it'll be like, I don't know, because we had a bunch of idiots running everything.
And that's how we should be living our lives. You should be living your lives so that when your grandchildren are asking your children about you, Mom and Dad, did your grandparents make the right decisions? You know, did they cause this problem?
Is there some sacrifice involved? Yes.
Yes,
There's some
I mean,
sacrifice. We've all made sacrifices for our families and our friends throughout our lives, right?
Right.
We all do that, right? And what she's saying is we have to sacrifice a little bit more here, people, or else we'll have nothing to give our children.
Right.
It's so powerful.
Yeah. And you should definitely follow her on every form of thing that you follow people on, because, I mean, what an amazing young
And if
woman.
you are a student, think about doing what she's doing. I mean,
Exactly.
that's your choice, whatever. I'm not telling you.
And if you're a parent, also think about doing that. I mean,
Right.
obviously, if your
Well,
child
because she
has-
brings up a good point.
Yeah.
What's the point of going to school if we're not learning that this should be one of the most important things that we're doing right now? Instead, we're basically not teaching
Right,
our
we're
kids
treating
that.
it like, oh, whatever.
I mean,
climate change.
How many schools in America have an environmental sciences class that teaches anything about global warming, global climate change, what's going on with the planet?
Right.
It's usually, if we're lucky enough, like my school district here in our town just got environmental sciences as a class 2 years ago in the high school level. And it's only going to reach a very small percentage of the kids because not everyone's going to take it. It's like an AP class. So it's like we're going to just teach like a few kids at the very last years of their schooling.
Right.
That's ridiculous. It should be taught alongside reading, writing, arithmetic, planet.
Throughout human history, humans didn't really have, you know, like an impact on the world around them. They couldn't really screw up the entire planet on a planetary scale. Like, yes, they could cut down all the trees on an island, and then that island wouldn't have trees for the rest of the time, like Easter Island. But I don't think we ever like learned any lesson about treating the planet, because it's just a spaceship that we have happened to have grown up on.
And that's my point. It's like if you're not teaching about the owner's manual for you as a person, which is psychology, and your planet, which is the earth, then you've missed the two most important things to be teaching about. All the rest should come secondary to that. Now, of course, you should learn how to read and write and so forth, and math. Those are part of the tools. But if you're not learning about your owner's manuals, then who cares?
Right. Getting back to, you know, history. It took, we believe, between 20 to 30,000 people to build the pyramids.
Okay.
Now, I want you to let that fact kind of sink in for a second, because, you know, you might be thinking, okay, what are you where you're going with this. But 20 to 30,000 people. We have 85,000 subscribers. We have more than double what it took to build the pyramids. Now, granted, it took these people their whole lifespans to build this big pyramid out of stone.
Is that what you're suggesting now? We go build
No. But what I'm saying is it took a lot of work for them, but they didn't have anything that what we have, right? They didn't have
no power tools.
There were no power tools. There were no cranes. There were no trucks. There were nothing.
No GPS.
You had, boats, and you had people, and you had rope and sand and wood. Like that was it. And they built the frickin' pyramids. They did it all because of one guy who was basically in charge and convinced everyone to do it.
Or enslave them.
Or right. Convinced. I'm using it, very loosely there. But what I'm saying is it only took 20,000 people with limited technology. We have so much more resources at our disposal.
True.
We're such a richer world, able to impact so many more things than, the Egyptians did to build the pyramids. And yet today we still look back at the pyramids and we say, wow, they built the pyramids.
No, I think you have a really good point. People out there don't realize how powerful they are. Every day we walk around not realizing that in our pocket is a computer that is more powerful than anything that's ever been on the planet before. If it had been around in the 60s, you'd be the most powerful person on the planet.
It's true.
And so you can now reach out to hundreds of people in a day, thousands, and pass on your message, get things done. But we don't do it because we're like, oh, I have other things to do. Or
whatever I
just
want
have
to watch.
I have to give people happy birthday announcements on Facebook. It's like, how about take a week of not saying happy birthday to people and taking that time and energy to contact your representatives or to run for office or to do something meaningful.
Right. Because it doesn't take a lot to get crazy things done. 20,000 people to build the pyramids, okay? 20,000 people. Just think about that.
Yeah.
There are more people watching this video right now than built the pyramids. We need to frickin' make stuff happen. That's part of, what we want to do with the community page. We want you guys to be imparting change and using each other as a group.
Yeah, and once one person posts that they did something, I bet more people will go, hey, you know what? Sally wrote a letter to somebody. I can write a letter to somebody.
Right, get in contact with each other and be like, how did you do that?
Yes.
What did you do?
Exactly.
Lay it out step by step. Make a little, standard operating procedure. So that way we can copy what you do and magnify it. Because that is ultimately what we should be doing. And again, this is why we're so amazed by this community that we have.
Yeah, we're going to be reporting in the community mail time section that our friend Carol set something up cool. You're going to want to see that. So, this can be done, and it can make it so much easier for everyone else.
Right. So, I just wanted to... It's been something I've been thinking
but
about.
There's good news coming up here,
Yes.
Jesse. Check this out. Normally, when we show you something like this, which is a Fox broadcast, it's a very depressing thing. But check this out.
Elon Musk doesn't give a hoot about what people think of him or say about him. Now, he took a lot of heat for smoking marijuana on camera. He was ridiculed for his wild, middle-of-the-night tweets. Lots of name-calling because of his behavior. Okay, I think it's time to re-evaluate the man. I think it's time to look at the man's achievements rather than his public image. Like him or not, Elon Musk is surely the prime example of a brilliant entrepreneur. He makes a state-of-the-art electric car. Okay, he leaned heavily on green tax credits, but the Tesla is a standout vehicle. He had the vision. A lot of people talk about their vision, but he went out and he did it. You've heard of SpaceX. That's an Elon Musk company. He had a vision for reusable rockets, and he went out and did that too. SpaceX is launching a network of satellites that will enhance the internet. He has brought private enterprise to the space business. That is an achievement. You heard of the Boring Company? Well, that's a play on words, of course. It bores tunnels. This is Musk's contribution to future mass transit. The point is, he did it. He just offered a tour of the tunnel he's already built in Southern California. It's not just talk. In the age of social media, we tend to fixate on the negatives. It's easy to pour scorn on someone who behaves like Elon Musk. But step back and look at what he has actually done. He's in the car business, the space business, the mass transit business. He's got a product in all three industries. That is tangible success. Give the man some credit.
Okay, so Stuart Varney, we've seen him before. In fact, just a month or so ago, we showed you Kimball Musk, and he was having a little run-in with Stuart, right? It seems that someone has gotten to Stuart. I'm going to conjecture that around Thanksgiving, maybe he was meeting with family, and maybe a nephew or niece sat next to him at Thanksgiving and was like, Stuart, I've been watching your shows, and you're totally missing the boat with Elon Musk. Because what he just said there, quote, give the man some credit.
Pretty nice thing for him to say.
Now, I know he totally missed the fact that Elon is also involved in solar and energy. He missed that completely. And he was also showing old pictures of Model S's.
Yeah.
And he didn't talk about the Model 3. But he did basically tell his viewership, which are people that follow him pretty closely, hey, let's give this guy a second chance. Let's look at this a little bit differently. And that's huge because a lot of people follow what Stuart says.
Right.
So let's take a positive when it comes our way.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. What else is cool is what Cathie Wood just said.
If you look at what's happened recently, we saw the same thing in early 16, and I remember there was running for the hills, and it turned out lower oil prices are a good thing. That's a tax cut for 90% of the world. Again, we were going through this massive, so your point about energy, Joe. And interest rates coming back down because inflation is going to come down, partly because of oil, but also because of the deflationary forces, the good deflationary forces we see associated with technology. Massive innovation taking place now that is permeating every sector and we think is really causing a lot of confusion. So oil prices going down for us is more symptomatic of electric vehicles starting to make a dent into the demand side of the equation. We think oil demand will peak in a secular sense, secularly, in the next 1 to 2 years, and then it's going down.
It's all because of it's partly because of electric vehicles?
Electric and ultimately autonomous electric vehicles, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But when you put this in together with what you see across the commodities complex, it's not just oil. So we have a backdrop of slowing economic growth around the world. We've got aluminum prices, at 20-month lows, nickel prices at 15-month low. The industrial metals are trading off significantly, and we have oil down. Does this give you another picture, though, of just demand not being there?
Well, dollar going up is one reason for commodity prices.
Yes,
sure. Yes, the world, including China, has been slowing down. And I think what's been noteworthy but not mentioned enough is I'm a Laffer disciple. So watching what China is doing on the tax front, they are cutting income tax rates pretty aggressively and cutting import duties aggressively. These are massive tax cuts. They're not just using monetary policy this time around. So we actually think, again, just like in the early 2016, it was China's stimulus that really got us back with momentum in the global economy. I think it's going to happen again.
Cathie, I'm wondering, is something changing in real time? Your bull case is very articulate, and I want to believe it. But when you see all of this volatility, you see the European banks down 50%, the U.S. banks down 25%, consumer sentiment is down, investor sentiment is down. Is it possible that you'll come back on 3 months from now and we'll say, well, it wasn't apparent in the data on December 28th, pardon me, but it's been made manifest that, wow, things aren't quite as good as we hoped?
I think, well, that's always possible. But our confidence that we're going to soon be on the other side of this volatile market is increasing as inflation comes down, interest rates coming down, valuations should go up. We're at 14 times earnings. That's pretty inexpensive as long-term interest rates are coming down. So the discount factor is coming down. And I do think the China stimulus is going to surprise. I think this is very healthy. It's not just monetary policy. It's not just debt. I actually think there's going to be some very strong demand coming out of China, and that will influence the rest of Asia as well. As far as Europe and the banks, we've been staying away from Europe for quite some time. Europe has not been an engine of growth for the global economy for quite some time. So this setback, we do think banks are also in the process of being disintermediated, and they're also facing the flattening yield curve, which we don't think is a bad thing. We actually think the yield curve will invert. This is going to be very problematic for financials. The reason it's going to invert is because inflation is going to surprise on the low side of expectations, while growth surprises on the high side of expectations, partly because of all of this innovation taking place.
I'm fascinated by the whole disintermediation storyline, Kathy, but at the same time, do you feel, I mean, is it possible that you're fast forwarding a bit in terms of the actual impact that disintermediation of the banks have in terms of transactions that happen every day, still require the traditional banks and vehicles? I mean, auto sales, they're down from their peaks, but they're still pretty close to their peaks. So we are seeing autos, just fossil fuel autos, still being sold.
So autos, we think, are also in the process of peaking globally, partly because, and this is going to happen sooner than I think most people anticipate, autonomous taxi networks are going to evolve. Tesla, we think, is leading the charge there, so to speak. And that means the vehicle miles traveled with electric cars, because capacity utilization of taxis is so much higher than personal cars. The vehicle miles traveled using electric cars is going to increase dramatically during the next 5 years. So many of the indicators that people use to gauge, hey, is this economy strong or not, the ground is changing underneath them because of new technologies.
Can banks be disintermediated as much as retail has been, as much as you believe cars will be, or is these threats coming later in the cycle such that they're kind of already more prepared for this than say retail was 10, 15 years ago?
I don't know. We think a company like Square, PayPal to some extent with Venmo, you know, they're going to start taking the place of these bricks and mortar banks. And, you know, the cost of acquisition for banks, cost of customer acquisition, is anywhere from $500 to $1,500 per customer. For Square, it's $20. You know, so their customer acquisition costs are so much lower. They have so much data on their clients, and they get it so quickly, real time. They know exactly what to do. They know when they're going to need working capital, when they're, you know, when they should need a loan to expand their business and so forth.
What's the bull buying in this market then?
What's the bull buying?
You.
Oh, the bull buying. Oh, goodness. So the cornerstone stocks of our innovation platforms include Illumina, so DNA sequencing, Tesla, so electric vehicles and autonomous taxi networks, Teradyne, collaborative robots. We think robots are going to permeate every sector. NVIDIA has been creamed for a very silly reason, crypto. It's a short-term inventory adjustment, but NVIDIA, when it comes to artificial intelligence and autonomous vehicles, is a prime mover. And blockchain technology, we are nibbling at GBTC, which is the only financial security.
The Grayscale Bitcoin Investment Trust.
Yes.
Yeah. You're really describing a very deflationary environment.
Yes. Very positive deflationary environment.
Well, how can it be so positive when in the last 5 to 10 years we've heard so much about the wealth effect and the importance of the wealth effect on the economy? Now we're almost reversing that wealth effect. You're seeing housing prices moderate. You're seeing asset prices moderate. And now you're describing an environment that's so deflationary. And I would think it would take looks like full employment and reverse that somewhat. How could that be positive?
So deflation associated with technology spurs unit growth. And that's what if you look at DNA sequencing in the healthcare space, DNA sequencing costs are dropping 50% per year. And that drop is causing an explosion in the demand for whole human genome sequencing. So real growth is explosive. So Illumina, expectations for revenue growth 15%. We think that's way too low. We think it's much closer to 30%. And last quarter, they did have a big surprise. So what you're thinking about is a deflationary bust. We are not thinking about that. We're thinking about the opposite, a deflationary boom. And this is very hard for people to get their arms around because you have to go back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, electricity, telephone, internal combustion engine, to see the same kind of environment. Deflationary boom, where you had an inverted yield curve more than half of the time with short rates.
So it won't deflate the housing market, it won't deflate asset prices.
No, it's going to be very positive.
Kathy Wood, she is the CEO and CIO, so the Chief Information Officer of ARK Investments. Now, ARK Investments is, I think, a $1 or $2 billion fund that invests in things like Tesla, obviously, and new emerging technologies. And their track record, unbelievable if you look at how much money they've made.
Right.
Because,
which means that they know what to invest in. They know what they're talking about.
And the questions that were being fired at her from the panel there were kind of like basically people who don't get it. And she basically said a couple of times, like, it is hard to wrap your arms around this. This is and the kind of big takeaway points for me was she likened it to the turn of the century from the 1800s into the 1900s, where we saw massive technological changes: electricity, telephones, cars. Things that I think at the time, if we could go back and you were, an analyst at the time, you would have gone like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And someone like
Telephones.
her back at the turn of the century would have been like, no, listen, cars,
telephones,
or,
they're electricity.
Happen.
And you would have been like,
shut up, we're going to have horses and telegrams and people are going to deliver messages to you.
We have things called mills that are run by power from water, and that's not going to change. And she was basically saying, it's about to change massively. And they didn't get it. And another big one, right at the beginning of it, she says that oil is going to peak in 2 years. Now, just if you remember, we did an in-depth a few weeks ago where we thought oil would peak in, 2023? And I think a lot of people thought, well, that's crazy. That's only a few years away. She's only talking 2 years away.
And a lot of... we're going to get into this in a little bit, but a lot of people were like, oh, we're not going to run out of oil. It's not running out of oil. It's not wanting oil.
It's disrupting the oil, making it so that it goes into a glut, basically.
Which is different than running out of the oil.
All you have to do is lower the demand by 1 or 2 million barrels a day, and all of a sudden you're overproducing. Because, again, all the producers in the world are not going to get together and agree on anything. So we bring you this because... in the mass media, it's very rare that you're going to get big occurrences of people who are smart enough, intuitive enough to see what's coming down the pike. And someone like Kathy Wood is one of those persons. And when we see it, we want to bring it to your attention because for the most part, 99% of the time, you're going to hear the same old, same old. It's really interesting to follow someone like this because if she's right, if we're right, things are going to be changing a whole lot differently than what most people say. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like you're not even having the same conversation that we're having. You're talking about things that don't even make sense to me. Yes, that's the point. Everything she said from banking. For instance, take a traditional bank, and she said it costs $500 to $1,500 to get a new customer. Square can get a new customer for $20.
That's called a disruption.
That's a disruption.
We're entering the world of disruptive technologies. And like she said, we haven't had very many disruptive technologies since the turn of the century.
And lastly, she talks about the fact that electric cars and autonomous cars will be making a huge impact in the next 5 years. Where have you heard that before? The only place I can think of is someone like Tony Seba or us, where we did the Autonomous Driving Future series.
Which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, watch it. You don't have to. I'm not saying you're going to believe in. Well, you will. I mean,
I think we put up pretty good arguments that are very. You might have heard an argument here, an argument there. We tried to bring them all together in a 10-part series about why our autonomous driving future is actually going to happen faster and have a bigger impact than you think.
So, I mean, if you haven't watched it, and I think you probably all have, because I mean, in terms of the viewage.
But we have a lot of new viewers.
We do have a lot of new viewers.
We have a lot of videos, so a lot of people aren't going to go back through 500 and 600 videos to see it.
Some of you may have joined us from the in-depth where we were talking about the impending auto and oil implosion. We were talking about the glut of oil.
We got a lot of views on that.
A lot of views on that. That video kind of went mini viral, which is great. We got a lot new subscribers and everything like that. And I was watching it pretty closely. I was watching a lot of the comments. We got a lot of really, really great comments, a lot of positive, upvotes on those comments. And then a couple days later, all of those comments started to disappear from the high, from the top comments. They still had hundreds of upvotes, but they were being replaced with comments like, where are you going to get all this electricity from? And batteries don't work. And Tesla's never been profitable before. All a bunch of really sketchy arguments that are not really true. So I did some digging into our analytics, and I found that about 300 views of our video came from r/oil, which is the subreddit for the oil industry. So what I think happened was our video got shared there, and everyone from the oil industry converged on our video, gave all these comments, all these positive comments like, wow, that's so cool. Yes, I am waiting for an electric car. Downvotes, because you can't see the number of downvotes on YouTube comments. You can only see the number of upvotes. So what happened was...
So if you downvote a comment enough, then it just gets pushed way down till no one sees it.
It gets pushed way down till no one sees it.
Interesting. So this is part of their playbook, is basically find a site that's got a video that's getting a lot of attention and make it seem like it's a bunch of malarkey.
Right. A lot of their arguments were not researched or just plain false. A lot of them were saying, like, EV car sales are down. They're not. A lot of them were saying Tesla's never been profitable. They were profitable last quarter. And it was honestly really scary. I want to be frank here. I banned a lot of these comments from our videos. I think that if these people are spreading lies, true lies, I mean, I went and I researched each one before I went to delete their comment and ban them from posting comments again. But basically, you know, either they were horribly rude,
right?
Like with lots of swears in them, so we're not going to tolerate that.
I mean, my feeling is you shouldn't downvote someone's comments just because you don't agree with them. You should downvote them because they were rude or insensitive.
It's the YouTube comment section. It's like the Wild West.
Right.
I mean, notoriously awful.
You know what I wish we could do? I wish we could assign like moderators from our Patreons to take care of our
we could.
And I think if you're out there, if you're a Patreon and you have a little free time, because it would take time, and you're interested in helping to moderate our comment section, it's something I pretty much avoid because I hate reading. You know, I like intelligent conversation and I don't mind controversy or discussion or whatever. But what I don't like is what you were pointing out. People are just like false, fake news. Like that does not get us anywhere.
Right. Or posting of false information, which there was a lot of.
Right.
And it's
so, I mean, having someone like you out there who could help moderate so that we could free up our time to work on making more content would be really valuable. So if you're interested in that, maybe post a comment here on this
right, or actually contact us through Patreon itself, just because I think we're going to need to have a little bit of a conversation.
Right.
We need to get a sense of people because it's a lot of power to just be able to remove comments from a video. Right. So I take it very seriously, and it was a little scary. It reaffirms a lot of the things that we've been saying.
Well, and honestly, it's going to happen more and more. I mean, our channel's growing, right? We're at 85,000 subscribers. We had a huge bump in the past month, and hopefully we're going to keep rising up, which means we're going to get on the radar of a lot more oil groups, and they're going to want to do this more often.
Well, the good news is those 300 people that decided to comment basically the same argument over and over again, really scary of just like, you're not going to have enough electricity. There's going to be rolling brownouts and blackouts. It's like, no, dude, like you don't even...
The sun provides so much
power. You could it's honestly, it's scary. Anyway.
But anyway, use our community page because it's this really cool spot, and I don't think most of us know about it or use it. I'll be there much more often, so will Jesse. So we'd love to see in the next couple weeks if you are there. And if you do want to have a Discord, we're open to that. We just didn't want to do it before we really fully examined the community page. So if that's something you're interested in, please let us know.
Right, because I mean, you guys might not want to talk to each other, and if that's the case, we're not going to have a Discord. I know that some of you want to have a Discord. It's not going to be like other YouTubers' Discords where we're just going to be on there all the time because we are two very busy fellows. We both have I have a full-time job. You run 3 businesses. And we're not just going to be sort of on there all the time, be like, hey, what's up, guys? You know, we're not that type of YouTuber.
Yet.
I mean, someday, with your support, we could potentially do that. But anyway.
Let's do the Model 3 tip of the week. So remember that we're giving you the tip of the week first, and then we're going to be releasing this as a video on Wednesday. So this is the Model 3 tip of the week. Hey, everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching the Model 3 tip of the week. This week we've got 2. So our friend Remy from Belgium asked us this question. Will this Dent Goalie work on the Model 3? Now, first of all, what is the Dent Goalie?
So it's this magnet that you put on the side of your car, which prevents, other car doors from denting your car.
Oh, okay.
It's not going to work on the Model 3 because a lot of the Model 3's body panels are aluminum.
Yeah, so we checked this out, and the 2 door panels on each side are aluminum. The front corner panel and the back quarter panel, the front quarter panel and the back quarter panel are steel, but the doors themselves are aluminum, and that's what this dent goalie sticks to. So unfortunately, this product won't work on the Model 3. Sorry.
But that's a good question.
Great question. And then we got this awesome tip from our buddy Scott out in California. Take it away, Scott.
Hi, Zach and Jesse. I'm here in San Francisco's historic Castro district, and I'm pulled over to the side of the road to share an experience I had with Navigate on Autopilot. I noticed that it wouldn't show up, there was nowhere to turn it on, and I had version 2018.12.4, and that just wasn't working. It wasn't there. So I read on the forums, and they said you have to be connected to Wi-Fi because maybe you need to download the latest maps and so on. So I pulled up the web browser and noticed that that wasn't working either. And so I pressed down on both thumb wheels, held them for 10 seconds or so, and that causes the Tesla to reboot. And then I tried to connect to Wi-Fi, couldn't really connect to Wi-Fi, and I realized that I didn't have a strong enough signal in our garage. So I backed out onto the street where I could get a slightly stronger signal and was able to connect to Wi-Fi, and the browser started working. Now, absolutely resetting the car caused the browser to start working. It wasn't connecting to Wi-Fi that did it. But once it connected, I was browsing around, adding some favorites to the web browser, and all of a sudden I got a notification that there was an update, and I took the update, and it took me to 2018.48.12.1, and still no Navigate on Autopilot. But again, on the forums it said that once you get the update, then you have to update the maps, and that requires Wi-Fi to do it, and it says that in the owner's manual. So I carefully pulled into the garage and positioned the car so that I still had a couple bars on the Wi-Fi signal, and then just left it overnight. And sure enough, when I came out this morning, the car finally offered me the choice to select Navigate on Autopilot. Once I turned the auto steering feature off and then turned it back on, I could select Navigate on Autopilot. So I just wanted to remind everybody that they may need to reset their car, and they may need to will definitely need to connect to Wi-Fi to get the Navigate on Autopilot update. At least that was my experience. All right, from the Castro in San Francisco, this is Scott, and now you know.
So really good point. This happened to me. It didn't happen to you because your car came with version 9 already pre-installed.
Yep.
I couldn't get my Model 3 to install the version 9 update, and I thought there was a problem with it. We had to bring it into Tesla service for another problem, and there they were able to upload it. Turns out there was no problem with the car, but as Scott said, we needed to have it in good Wi-Fi for a long period because that update he was talking about is 5 gigabytes.
Wow.
And so the car needs constant good Wi-Fi. And where I have it parked, he had the same kind of problem. I've got like 1 bar out in the...
Kind of iffy Wi-Fi.
Yeah, it's iffy Wi-Fi. So what I've done to solve that problem is I've hooked up another router near a window so that I have better Wi-Fi out there. Maybe something you guys could consider. All right, so that was our Model 3 tip of the week. We're going to be doing this every week, and what we'd love from you guys is to post what you'd like us to tip about, like things you want to know about for the Model 3, things that you wish you knew or already know. If you've got a tip for us, let us know.
And feel free to share this with your friends who are driving Model 3s or who are thinking of getting Model 3s. We have like a huge list of tips that we are going to be pumping out every Wednesday. So,
and here's a tip. If you're thinking of getting a Model 3, use our referral code. It's good until March 11th, and we will give you a ride in the next generation Roadster. We're one of the craziest people out there who will still do this. If you live in the US, Canada, or Europe, we will visit your house, pick you up in the car, blow your mind, and then drop you off somewhere, and you'll be like,
yeah. All right, so we will see you on Tesla Time News next Monday. Now you know.
Thank you guys for watching the Patreon bonus stories. I love that part of the show because I feel like we can kind of let our hair down a little bit, talking to friends, and the community just keeps growing. So it's awesome.
And if you're new, if this is your first Patreon bonus story, welcome. We're so glad to have you. This is an exciting thing that we get to do every week.
And it's the last one of the year.
Yeah. So Happy New Year, everybody. Now you know.